After extensive research on meat slicers, I found a couple I really liked, and I narrowed it down to the Weston 320 10-inch. Arrived today. Got a little damage to the packaging, but I don't think it's going to matter. It looks like it's sealed up in there pretty well. I'm not going to put you through watching me open this box and try to lift it out of here. So we'll be back when we get this all up on the counter. I was pleasantly surprised when I opened the box to find another box inside. It's a great deal for me because when I'm not using this, it's going to need to be stored in the garage. So this box will come in handy to keep it nice and clean and dust free once I get it all working and cleaned up. I'm very impressed with how they packaged this. It was in a box with custom fit styrofoam that slid over the top and the bottom. The only two pieces I had to remove from the box were the actual slicer and the sharpening blades. So we're going to get all this plastic taken off and get a look at what we got going on. With everything unpacked, looks like the only real work to be done is to attach this meat guard. That's going to go right in here. Check out the instructions real quick before we get too carried away with this. Looks like we got an extra sharpening blade and a spare belt. Very nice. Have to attach these sharpeners. Looks like it came with a protective cap that's going to be removed for that to slip into. From what I see so far, carriage has a nice smooth action to it. We'll get a little mineral oil on that to loosen that up even more. The adjustment is nice and stiff, so I don't think it's going to jump around when you're trying to slice with it. Got a protective coating over the off and on switch to keep it from getting any gunk in there. From the back, looks like everything is just the way it's supposed to be. So we're going to take a rag with some warm soapy water, wipe any oil from the factory off of this thing, and we'll give it a shot at slicing some ham and some turkey, see what we're up against. And once we're done with that, we'll do a thorough cleaning, sanitize it, and see how it works. We took a few minutes and read through the owner's manual. Just wanted to make sure there wasn't anything out of the ordinary I needed to know. We added the protective guard, just a couple of flathead screws. This will come right off when you clean it. Just be careful not to over tighten that. It is plastic and it will crack. One positive thing I found, this has a locking mechanism so that if you choose to use this without that, it's not going to be flopping around. Move it, slides down, and you can keep your hands away from that blade. I think that's a very, very nice feature. This came just strictly to fill that gap. This is where the sharpening stones are going to go. When it's in this position with the stones to the back, that's how it's going to mount in. It's going to seal that up and protect you from that blade a little bit. When you take that off and turn it around, you're able to sharpen that blade up every now and then as necessary. We're going to turn this around. I found one thing. I was debating between the Bestwood 250 and this machine for months. Could not make a decision. I found a few things about this machine I liked, a few things about the Bestwood. Ultimately, I landed here. The one thing I'm noticing is the Bestwood came with a bread deflector that attaches right here. So as you're slicing bread, it pulls it away, it doesn't jam in. Kind of a nice feature, wish I had it. Another feature I found as I was cleaning this that I like, this is able to be adjusted to a positive stop, so that as you're adjusting the level of the tray to get your thicknesses right, you can actually move this up and lock it on to as far as you want it to go, so you don't have to worry about that thickness changing as you're using it. Another thing I found, I'm going to turn this over. Another thing I found, I took this off and looked inside. That's where the belt for the motor runs that blade. I'm not real happy. This, I realize, has to breathe, but it creates a low pressure area that if you should get any moisture running down here or food particles on your counter, they could get sucked up in here. So I'm going to make sure every couple of 3 cooks, every couple of 3 uses of this, that I make sure I take this off and make sure there's nothing gathering in there. Could be a bad situation for bacterial buildup. It looks like it's shielded pretty well. It would have to really run down onto this, and I don't see that happening. Like the suction cups, they're not actual suction cups, but they seem to do a real good job of keeping this from sliding around as you're using it. So with everything in place, we're down to the moment of truth. We're going to turn this thing on. I like the fact that this switch has a real thin plastic cover over it. Seems pretty durable. That way when you're cutting, you're not going to get juice and food particles running down in here and clogging that switch up. Very nice feature. So let's find out what this thing sounds like. Wow, that's pretty quiet. I like that. So next step, we're going to get some meat out, run it through, see how it cuts, and we'll be back in a second. In anticipation of this arriving today, went to the store, we picked up some Genio turkey and some applewood ham. We're going to start off with the ham. We've got this set on number 6 right now. We're going to do a few thick slices for some breakfast meat. Always good to have ham and eggs. So let's see what happens here. Oh, that's beautiful. Nice clean cut. I can tell with a little mineral oil, this is going to slice a little bit smoother. Not quite getting as even as I'd like. It's hanging up a little bit. So now we're going to take this down. We're going to thin this up for some lunch meat slices. Got a nice vacuum sealer, so we will just vacuum seal these. Oh, that's better. That's working really nicely. Yeah, I'm going to definitely have to hit a couple of these moving parts with some mineral oil, get them moving a little bit smoother. After we clean this up today, after the use, we'll coat everything with a nice coating of mineral oil. It's picking up a little bit better. Just wants to hang up a little bit. I'm sure that'll wear in, and with the mineral oil, it'll be much better. Very easy to slice. I don't understand why that's hanging up though. Oh, there's the rub. That only goes down to a certain point. Always turn this off anytime you're going to get your hands near that blade. With that only going down, you see this piece right here? That stops it from going any deeper than that. So you're not going to be able to get slices all the way to the end. All right, so we wound up with some real nice breakfast slices. We'll fry those up for some ham and eggs. Got some real nice thin slices of ham. Turned out very nicely. So now we're going to go for the turkey. We got this set at 1.5. We'll see what that works like as far as thickness. And here we go. Oh, that's what I'm looking for right there. Nice and thin. Boy, that's got a real nice smooth action to it. Very nice. Give you a shot from the back here. You can see that coming out. Very nice, easy to stack, lots of room to work back here. Nothing really going to cut you from the back. That's working very nicely. So we'll just finish slicing this up and Like I said earlier, we've got a nice vacuum sealer. So we'll go ahead and vacuum pack a couple of different packages of this. Might even freeze some, but it makes great sandwiches. I'm going to get a lot of use out of this slicer. So far, I'm impressed. I like it. A couple of things I know will get better with a little mineral oil. Stop that hanging up. I wish it went a little bit further down on that last piece as you get to the end of this. But that's as close as you're going to get it. So you're always going to end up with that little piece at the end. So I think what we'll do with those, we'll find a use for those. We'll cube them up and use them in one of our barbecues. And that's about what you end up with on the end. But it did give us a very nice stack. That's going to work very well. So the ultimate goal for this is awesome. We've got turkey in Ziploc baggies and ham in Ziploc baggies to go in our refrigerator. And we've got turkey and ham that's going to go in the freezer, vacuum packed. That'll keep a long time. Not that it's going to last a long time around here. So the next step, guys, we're going to pull this apart and get it cleaned up, and we'll walk through that here in just a second. So now that we've finished slicing everything, the next step is we're going to take this completely apart, wash it with some warm soapy water, lubricate everything, and put it back together. We're going to start by taking off this guard. And I got to be honest with you guys, I got a feeling this guard is going to be left off 90% of the time. It seems to be more in the way than I would like it to be. Not sure it's of the value that it's meant to be. I'm sure if I had a larger piece of meat on here that it would guard from splashing out any juices. But I think for the most part this is going to be left off. Next we're going to remove this carriage. Just a matter of loosening this knob. That's going to come right off. We'll be able to wash that. Now we're going to turn this around just to give you a look. This is going to come off. These are the sharpening stones. Take that off of there. And then we're going to loosen this knob. This knob is what is holding the plate on the front in place. Once it's completely loose, if you push on it, you can pull this plate off and get that washed up. So now we're going to turn this back around. I took this apart when it first came in to clean it really well. One of the things I was concerned about is these 3 screws. I've read that they were so tight that it was easily stripped. I like the Bestwood 250 10-inch. It uses an Allen wrench for these screws. Less apt to strip them out. So I would caution you, they were a little tight when I first took them off of there. So I'll caution you to be very careful. Make sure you have the correct size Phillips head for this, because if you don't, you strip that out, it's not going to be good. So just go ahead and make sure you have it. I didn't tighten them down super tight when I took them off. I don't really think they need to be extra tight, especially since you're going to clean this after each use. If they do tend to back out and loosen up, it's not going to be an issue. So by removing these 3 screws, this is where we want to be extra careful, because now that blade is going to be exposed. I spent a lot of time as an apprentice meat cutter using slicers, and I've seen a lot of people get injured on them. I highly recommend, guys, using a pair of non-cut gloves when you handle this blade. Never submerge this in water and make it slippery. You're just asking to get hurt. So with your gloves on, we're going to take this out, and now we're able to wipe all of this down with warm soapy water. Once we've done that, we'll dry everything, put it all back together, hit it with some sanitizer. So we'll be back in a second once we clean this all up. All right, as you can see, we've taken this completely apart, warm soap and water, we washed everything off. We took all the pieces and parts and we mixed up some of this solution I got from a buddy that runs a sandwich shop. Heavy duty sanitizer. It takes so little of this with a cup of water, it's almost hard to measure how little it needs. But as you can see, we've sprayed everything down with that. We're gonna let it dry. We'll hit this real quick, just to make sure everything is nice and clean. We don't want any bacteria buildup on this. Once this dries, we're gonna hit a few areas with some mineral oil, make sure everything doesn't get rusty, and we'll lubricate this slide, see if that'll pick up a little bit nicer. We sprayed everything, the knobs, the bolts, everything is done. We're just gonna wait for that to air dry now and put it all back together. So now, we've got a generous amount of mineral oil on this rag. We're just gonna tuck it up under this blade and spin the blade. Get that oil on the back of that blade. Very careful because that will cut through that rag, guys. And then we're going to go ahead and use mineral oil on the front. That's going to keep it from rusting. I don't know that it will, but better safe than sorry. And as you can see, guys, be very careful. It will cut it. Okay, so with the blade done, now we're going to go ahead and get up in here and get this rod with this mineral oil that is sliding on. It's going to give it a much more efficient slide. Won't hang up at all. Once we've done that, we'll just work that in a little bit. And I want to make sure that's really well done, so we're going to hit this with a little bit more mineral oil. Get that nice and coated. And then we're also going to go ahead and hit this. That should make that work a little more. Oh yeah, that's much nicer. That's not going to hang up at all that way. Now one more thing, guys, if you're not familiar with using mineral oil, it is highly combustible when it sits and gets with the air. If you guys took shop class, you know what I'm talking about. So if you're not going to wash this rag out, possibly wash it out, throw it away, what I like to do is I have a mason jar. We stuff that rag in there, seal that up airtight, and now I don't have to worry about any flammability from that rag. Okay, we've let everything air dry with the sanitizer on it. We're ready to put this back together. So we're going to start with the blade. Line this up, there's 3 holes, pretty easy to spot. Once that's back in place, we won't need these gloves anymore. I tell you guys, if you're handling that blade and you don't have a pair of good gloves on, you're asking for trouble. So now we have 3 screws. They're going to go back in here. And again, we're not going to tighten these super tight. Oops, wrong one. We're not going to tighten these super tight because you don't want to strip these. If those heads get stripped out, you're going to play hell getting those bolts out of there. So, once our blade is back on, and again, I wouldn't tighten those super tight as you're putting them in. Make sure each one is in before you put any pressure on them. Make sure that blade sits evenly flat. Once it's in, go ahead and tighten them down a little bit. And again, I can't stress that enough, guys. Do not over tighten those. You won't get them back out of there. We got that back on. Next is the guard and the plate for the front. This is going to thread through the back. You see it pop out there. I'm going to put this on. It's got an arrow at the top. And that will just thread right on there. Next, we did take this off because I wanted to get a good cleaning on it. It's nice and dry now. You're going to have 2 bolts that go through there with a washer and a nut for the back. Oops, wrong ones. That's not the right one, Tony. Come on. Washer and a nut. It's a flat head, so we'll go ahead and just tighten that down. You do want to get that fairly tight so it's not wobbling. Once we have that on, like I said, I think we're going to leave this guard off. I don't think we're going to use it very much. Kind of in the way. We'll just store that for later. I'm going to put our sharpeners back on. Wheels to the back. This will go in to hold that tight. And before we do this carriage, put this back on, we're going to mineral oil that slide that's attached to and the blade. So the last thing we have to do is just make sure that that is closed all the way so we don't get cut. This carriage goes back on like such. Crank that knob back down. We are ready to go. Oh, that's much nicer. That's sliding very easily now. I like it. I hope this was useful, guys. Thanks for tuning in. See you on the next video.